A crying little girl asks a U.S. Marine for help. What he discovered will leave you amazed. Mike stepped into the sunlight, a jarring contrast to the darkness that lingered in his mind. As a Marine, he had trained to face the harshest battles, but the echo of gunfire felt far away, replaced by the mundane sounds of his quiet hometown. Children laughed, skates clattered on pavement, and the smell of fresh grass filled the air. Yet, all he could feel was the weight of his memories from overseas, the loss of comrades that had left indelible scars on his soul. Walking down streets that once held the innocence of carefree laughter, his heart was a tempest of duty and despair. What did it truly mean to serve, to protect? He was back, but it felt like he'd never left that distant shore, and the warmth of home felt like a bitter reminder of what he'd lost. He strolled toward the park, drawn by a commotion. Joyful shrieks turned quickly to the sound of a little girl's cries. Curiosity pulled him closer, and he found her. Lucy, a petite figure standing on a park bench, wisps of hair framing her tear-streaked face. Instinct kicked in. Despite the emotional turmoil in his own heart, he knelt down to her level. "What's wrong, little lady?" he asked gently. She looked at him with wide, watery eyes, and through quivered breaths, described her missing stuffed bear. The bear wasn't just a toy, it was a lifeline to her mother who had passed away. Mike felt a sharp sting in his chest, a reflection of his own loss. The fallen brothers he could never bring back. "No," he whispered to himself, fighting the urge to drown in his memories. "I can't lose this battle, not again." But the memories pressed heavily upon him, questions percolating in his mind. Was he strong enough to help Lucy? Did he even know how to connect to someone so vulnerable when he still felt broken inside? The thought of not being able to do enough simmered beneath his skin. With determined resolve, Mike listened as Lucy recounted her family's struggles. The picture of her dad, once a proud businessman now adrift in despair, echoed the silent battles he faced himself. Desperation surrounded him like a thick fog. Every story of struggle he unearthed in Lucy's hometown felt like an anchor pulling him down into a moral abyss. He recalled the sacrifices made for his country. Was it worthwhile if he couldn't help the people he loved? Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. He felt a spark ignite within him, something he hadn't felt since returning home. Using his military training, he steeled himself to venture beyond his comfort zone. But all around him he saw deep cracks in a once thriving community. Families teetering on the brink of eviction, businesses folding like paper. Each revelation left him questioning whether he could truly make a difference. Would he face the same ghosts that haunted Lucy's father? Faced with prejudice and an unexpected confrontation at a moment when everything seemed to align, he faltered. Standing at the edge of uncertainty, Mike felt a burning question clawing at his insides. Could he rise above, challenge the injustice he now confronted? Turning back to Lucy, he saw the flicker of hope in her eyes and knew he couldn't retreat. But could a man still chasing his own demons fight for others? The looming decision could change everything. Mike took a deep breath, grounding himself in the park's familiar sights and sounds. The distant laughter and the rustling leaves became a backdrop to his inner tumult. The decision he faced loomed larger than ever, urging him to confront the dual reality of his own wounds and the duty he felt toward Lucy. If he chose to help, could he truly step outside himself without getting lost in the chaos again? The determination that flickered inside him began to gain momentum. He stood tall, shaking off the chains of self-doubt. "Okay, Lucy," he said with newfound conviction. "Let's find your bear." The shift in his voice seemed to affect her demeanor. She wiped her tears, and he saw a glimmer of hope in her eyes. "Really? You'll help me?" she asked, her tone shifting from despair to cautious optimism. "Absolutely," Mike replied. drawing upon every ounce of leadership he'd honed in service. He understood that commitment meant more than just words. It required action, and this was a chance to forge a new path. As he strategized their search, it became less about the bear and more a journey of connection and trust. He had trained to lead soldiers into combat, but now felt a new calling, one requiring empathy and understanding, rather than simply the skills of a warrior. They began their search methodically, starting where Lucy last remembered having the bear. As they moved through the park, Mike noticed small details he had often overlooked: the cheerful expressions of children playing, the quiet resilience of parents tending to their kids. Each moment offered him a glimpse of the simple joys that still existed amidst the struggles that surrounded him. In a profound way, it was as if the community itself was silently urging him to become a part of its healing. With each passing minute, he became attuned to the unspoken stories woven through the park's landscape. There were teenagers huddled over a game of basketball, a couple on a bench seemingly lost in each other's eyes, and elderly folks sharing a shaded spot discussing the intricacies of life. It ignited an ember of ambition within him. Surely, he could bridge the gaps between resilience and despair in the face of adversity. As they combed through the park, Lucy lit up with ideas on where the bear might be. Each suggestion led them deeper into the heart of the park, past the swings, around the fishing pond, and through the wooded trail. As he listened to her voice soar with creativity, Mike felt his own burdens begin to dissipate, unveiling an unexpected ally in the form of his connection with Lucy. Yet, as their quest unfolded, it became obvious that the obstacles were not just physical. Shadows of his own history clung to him. The fears of inadequacy, the anxiety over not being able to protect those in need as he had once sworn to do. With every step, he was pulled between the weight of remembrance and the charge toward a future he was now forging. They paused momentarily near a cluster of trees, and Mike crouched beside Lucy, who was searching determinedly amongst the roots. He focused on her, feeling an urgency awaken within him. "Lucy," he said, taking her small hands in his, "we're going to find your bear. But regardless of whether we do or not, you have to promise me something." She looked up, her expression a mixture of curiosity and uncertainty. "Promise me that you'll keep looking for ways to be brave, even when it feels heavy. That's what real strength is, facing what scares you." Lucy nodded, an innocent agreement, but the way she held his gaze made him believe she understood more than just the words. Just then, a loud rustle came from behind the trees, prompting Mike's instincts to kick in. His heart raced as he turned to see a movement just outside their view. What emerged could either signal an unexpected help or a challenge. The truth was rising like bile in his throat. Whatever awaited them next was deeply tied to the journey he was now on. "Let's go check it out," he said, grasping her hand firmly. The uncertainty blossomed into tension, and in that crisp moment he realized, rising to help Lucy meant confronting not just her fears, but his as well. Would he choose to face whatever lay ahead for not just her, but for himself? A new chapter of determination had begun to unfold, and with it, a new reckoning awaited. As Mike cautiously approached the source of the rustling, he felt the adrenaline pumping through his veins. The park, once a sanctuary of solace, now felt like a battleground charged with uncertainty. He glanced at Lucy, her wide eyes reflecting both fear and excitement. There was a weight on his shoulders. He had committed to guiding her through this moment as he grappled with his own insecurities. Is this what it meant to serve? Risk without the aura of certainty enveloping him? The answer remained elusive, yet there was no turning back now. The remnants of his military training whispered to him, assess, adapt, and act. Keeping an unyielding grip on Lucy's hand, he squinted between the branches, focusing on the shivery shadow that danced just out of sight. "Stay close," he whispered, attempting to cloak his own tremors in reassurance. "Do you think it's my bear?" Lucy's voice was barely a whisper, tinged with hope. Mike didn't answer right away. Instead, he took a breath, tuning out the chaotic whirl of self-doubt that rattled him. This wasn't just another mission. It was a ripple of collective fears they were facing together. A moment like this, he thought, could redefine not just Lucy's day but his own path forward. The rustling turned into something more, a heavy, uncertain breath. His heart quickened. Gathering his courage, he moved forward. The anticipated reveal felt like a door opening to a world of potentiality, a chance to confront the shadows that clung to him like an ill-fitting uniform. Suddenly, a small raccoon stumbled into their view. It paused, eyeing them with curiosity before scrambling away. Relief washed over Mike, a laugh almost escaping his lips, but he swallowed it down. This little creature was merely an errant distraction from the fears he had been wrestling with. It wasn't the confrontational challenge he'd braced for, but rather a stark reminder. Sometimes the unexpected could become comical in the face of serious intentions. In the aftermath of their startled encounter, he felt a spark burn brighter inside, a sense of lightness mixed with determination. "Okay, Lucy, that was something," he said, crouching back down to her level. "But we still have work to do." "Yeah, we still need to find my bear," she replied, her spirits lifted with newfound energy. As they resumed their search, Mike's mind raced. The hunt for a child's toy was revealing layers of himself long buried, a desire to belong, the will to protect, and the acknowledgement of fears that had marred his recent past. His heart began to thump with clarity. The bear wasn't just about recovery for Lucy, but symbolizing his journey toward being more than what his past had defined him as. With focus and intent, they moved past the serene pond, where the sunlight glistened on the water's surface. Mike recognized this place as both a mirror and a contrast to his own turbulent inner life. Here was beauty, amid struggles. He could identify with that dichotomy. His life was no less vibrant for its complexities. "Mike, what if we check over there?" Lucy pointed enthusiastically to a small grove. He admired the tenacity in her voice. This little girl was teaching him how to navigate the world again, showing him trust was built on action, not fear. Following her lead, they stepped into the shady enclave. As they searched, Mike's thoughts surged forward. He realized this moment wasn't merely a helping hand he extended to Lucy. It was a leap toward his own reclamation. No matter how daunting the task felt, confronting the realness of vulnerability allowed him to uncover hidden strengths. Then, merged in the tranquility of the grove, Mike made a resolve. He would explore the deeper meanings of courage, trust, and the responsibility he felt towards others. The journey hadn't been about finding a stuffed animal. Rather, it was an awakening to face not just the outer world, but the uncharted territories within himself. Suddenly, Lucy exclaimed, "Look, Mike!" He followed her finger, snowballing his hope beyond measure. There, tangled amongst the tall grass, he saw the familiar shape of a teddy bear. A wave of elation surged through him, bringing a renewed sense of purpose. But as he reached for the toy, the ground beneath him shifted too. A realization pierced through the joy of retrieval. Could the bear symbolize a broader healing that transcended this moment? "Lucy," he said, his voice steady, "this bear is a reminder that we have courage within us. But not only in finding what's lost, it's about discovering the strength to face our fears." Before she could respond, the wind shifted, knocking his hat off, sending it spiraling to the ground, revealing more tangled roots just below the surface. What lay beneath that earth could either be comforting or confrontational. Would their journey end here in triumphant success, or did something deeper await for Mike and Lucy that would interweave their fates even further? The tension flared, igniting a readiness for what was yet to come. As Mike knelt down to pick up his hat, Lucy's gleeful squeal at retrieving her teddy bear mixed with the dull thud of his heart against his chest, but the uncovering of the roots sent an unsettling tremor through him. The ground beneath them represented more than the earth. It signified buried memories and unresolved battles. He straightened, hesitating, caught in a breath between triumph and trepidation, trying to gauge the weight of this moment. "What's wrong, Mike?" Lucy asked, her playful exuberance overshadowed by a flicker of concern as she noticed his abrupt descent into contemplation. He reflected on the unresolved parts of himself. "It's just, sometimes what we find can lead us to other things we're not ready for. It's important to remember that," he replied, crafting a gentle wall between his inner disquiet and her innocent joy. Lucy clutched the bear to her chest, her small fingers entwined around its worn fabric. "But I'm happy we found it." He took a breath, conscious of how this little girl was starting to mirror his own longings, innocence and courage intermingled. "You're absolutely right," he affirmed. "Finding things is a part of growth. It means we don't give up." As they began to retrace their steps, Lucy edged closer, emboldened by the warmth of their recent victory. "What else do you think we can find?" Her eyes sparkled with hope, but it struck Mike how much his own searching had barely begun. The two walked deeper into the grove. The sensation of vulnerability hovered, teasing him with its uncomfortable truth. Memories of uncertainty and failure nipped at his heels, begging for acknowledgement. For the first time, he didn't want to bury his past but rather to expose it, peel away its layers and truly engage with it. While Lucy chirped ideas of where to look next, his mind drifted. What unresolvedness lay intertwined between those exposed roots? He had built a life around control and measured risks, but from this young girl's perspective, searching for her bear and seeking adventure was a challenge ripe with possibility. Could it be that he'd lived in the shadows of his past for too long? How liberating would it be to confront what lay below the surface without fear? "Lucy, what's something you're scared of?" The question slipped from his lips before he could reconsider. He needed to ground himself in her honesty, tethering his introspection to the simplicity of a child's perspective. She paused, staring thoughtfully at the shrinking shadows cast by the trees. I'm scared of the dark. What if there's a monster?" There was a pause, then her features firmed into determination. "But if I turn on my flashlight, I can see what's really there." A smile crept across Mike's face, amplifying the echo of her bravery. Her unwavering resolve ignited something. Within those words lay insight. He was an expert in confronting darkness and overcoming challenges through sheer will. But perhaps it was time to let light into the spaces where he thrived on survival alone. "What if we confront the darkness together?" Mike suggested, testing his own commitment to the idea, testing the resolve that would have him face his shadows head-on. Lucy nodded, her enthusiasm returning. "Yeah, 'cause we would find no monsters, just cool stuff." There it was. The idea of illuminating fears, instead of avoiding them, was exhilarating. Taking this little girl's honesty and courage as a lesson, Mike felt a shift. With each step, he might simultaneously be seeking Lucy's lost bear and rediscovering aspects of himself he had thought long buried. They ventured further, Lucy dancing ahead amidst the dappled light, while Mike's heart began to steady with the rhythm of newfound courage. The grove whispered stories untold, and he longed for the revelations they might offer. Maybe he could unravel some of the evasive threads of his own turbulent past with every careful excavation of the earth. Suddenly, a loud crunch interrupted their exploratory enthusiasm, a sound generated by something heavy in the underbrush. Tension thickened the air once more. Both froze, instincts igniting. What awaited them in the shadows of the grove? The depths of his heart stirred in anticipation. Perhaps real confrontation beckoned not just from within, but from the external world. Would Mike and Lucy become mentors of courage to one another? Or was something darker looming just out of sight? The moment had arrived. They were about to discover not just a perspective of growth, but a reality that might redefine their entire journey. The crack of twigs echoed, resonating deeply in Mike's chest with a blend of anxiety and resolve. He scanned the underbrush, heart thrumming as adrenaline coursed through him. Lucy, ever the embodiment of courage, clutched her teddy bear and stepped forward, eyes wide with wonder. "What was that?" she whispered, her small voice barely masking the tremor beneath. "I'm not sure," Mike replied, cautious yet intrigued. The idea of facing uncertainty with Lucy at his side reignited the ember of courage that had been slowly smothered by years of self-repression. He placed a gentle hand on her shoulder, a silent promise that he'd protect her, even as he wrestled with the shadows of his own fears. Each heartbeat seemed to echo his predicament. A man shaped by past failures, now compelled to confront the entwined roots of his own history, all while guiding this fearless child. He exhaled slowly, feeling both her presence and his responsibility weighing heavily. What lesson lay beyond the threshold of the unknown? As they moved closer to the source of the sound, Mike's instincts kicked in. The world around them transformed into a living entity of whispers and shadows. The grove had shifted, seemed alive, pressing gently against his awareness. Memories from his own childhood flickered through his mind, explorations filled with thrill and trepidation. Those moments shaped him into the man who could face the darkness, but what had he missed in the process? What if it's just an animal? Lucy suggested, enthusiasm creeping back into her voice, tinged with an infectiously naive curiosity that Mike found refreshing. Maybe, he mused, questioning why he had always assumed the worst: darkness, danger, and disaster. Maybe there was power in unearthing the unknown, rather than shying away from it. Let's see. They inched forward, the tension between them charged with a newfound resolve. Another crunch. This time, a shadow shifted among the branches, a glimpse of something moving behind the foliage. "There it is!" Lucy exclaimed, her excitement palpable as she darted ahead. Mike quickly followed, feeling an uncanny mixture of fear and thrill. In that moment, he realized how long it had been since he felt alive, truly alive, engaging with the world rather than merely surviving it. When they reached the clearing, a young deer stood nervously, its big eyes filled with a mixture of fear and curiosity. It shifted, exposing its delicate frame before bounding off into the deeper woods. Lucy gasped in awe at the sight. "Wow! Did you see that, Mike?" she beamed, beaming up at him with infectious joy. "It was beautiful." "Yeah," he agreed, struck by the spontaneity of their interaction with nature's simplest wonders. It was a reminder that not all encounters with the unknown had to be laced with fear. In that moment, Mike recognized the power of connection, both with the child and the world around him. Though a sliver of uncertainty still lingered, it was overshadowed by an emerging realization that he had been so consumed by his own troubles that he had overlooked life's broader canvas. What could he gain by allowing Lucy's perspective to influence his own? With renewed determination, Mike turned back toward the dense grove. Each step felt lighter, and he allowed himself to breathe more freely, embracing the potential for discovery, both of the world and within himself. "Let's keep exploring!" Lucy danced beside him, her laughter mingling with the crisp air of the grove. They pressed on, deeper into the thicket, beneath the whispering trees offering unsolicited encouragement. Mike started to consider the unresolved fragments of his past, the pain, the regret, but this time, they didn't feel insurmountable. Instead, they beckoned him to learn, to grow, and to discover hidden strengths he had buried for far too long. As they sought adventure among the shadows, Mike's inner compass pointed toward confronting the remnants of his history, no longer as an anxious survivor, but as a willing participant in the journey. What awaited them ahead would ask more of him than he had ever given, but as Lucy giggled at the thought of finding more cool stuff, he felt ready, invigorated by the possibility of transformation. But just as they plunged into a thicket of ferns, a looming presence cast a shadow over them both. The air thickened, anticipation spoke volumes, and Mike sensed he was not just confronting his own fears, but something lurking far beyond his past. The moment had come. What truths awaited them? And could he summon the courage to defend not only Lucy's innocence but his own? The moment of tension hung thick in the air, the weight of Mike's unease clashing with Lucy's adventurous spirit. Just ahead of them, a rustle sounded again, unmistakably larger this time. Mike instinctively moved to shield Lucy, an instinct honed from years of navigating danger, both external and internal. But as he caught a glimpse of the shadow, his heart raced not just with fear, but with a surge of purpose. "Stay close to me, Lucy," he murmured, quickening his pace as they advanced through the ferns. Each step deeper into the thicket felt like a deliberate choice to confront not just whatever emerged from the shadows, but also the darker corners of his own past. It was a duel facing off, external threats and internal redemption woven into a single journey. Suddenly, A small figure burst through the bushes, a terrified animal trapped in a snare. Its eyes reflected desperation, mirroring the fears that had governed Mike's life for years. A young fawn, much like the deer they had seen earlier, struggled against the crude bindings. The panic in its gaze echoed the turmoil within Mike's heart. He felt a swell of empathy for the creature, understanding it was his own captivity to anxiety and regret that he had been fighting against all along. With each moment that passed, he recognized his agency. He could choose to act. That realization pulsated through him with newfound vigor. "Lucy, wait here," he instructed, crouching down to approach the frightened creature. The fear he had felt mere moments ago began to ebb away, replaced by a determination to free it. Using his hands carefully, Mike worked to unravel the snare, navigating the delicate balance of urgency and caution, aware that sudden movements might frighten the fawn further. As he focused, his thoughts turned to the weight of past failures that often immobilized him. The pain he identified with had always clouded every decision, making it easier to freeze in uncertainty. "It's okay, little one," he whispered softly, feeling a bond with the innocent creature. "I won't let you get hurt." The words passed his lips before he registered their implications. He was asserting control over his surroundings in a way he had seldom allowed himself to do. In a ragged moment, the last knot came undone, and the fawn bolted into the underbrush, free at last. Lucy clapped her hands, her eyes wide with joy. "You did it! You saved it!" she cheered, her voice ringing with pure delight, piercing through Mike's remnants of doubt. "Yeah," he replied, surprised at how easily the words came. His own victory echoed in her enthusiasm. In that instant, navigating the forest had morphed into something more than just a simple adventure. It was a visceral lesson about liberation and choice. Each echoing snap of a twig now mapped the contours of his journey, pointing toward self-discovery rather than avoidance. With Lucy at his side, Mike felt like a participant in his own life, rather than a spectator on the sidelines. Still lingering in the shadows of that emotional triumph was the recognition that the path ahead remained obscured. Unresolved moments from his past still lingered, waiting at the periphery of his consciousness. What if something else needs our help? Lucy's eyes sparkled with excitement, pulling Mike from his reverie. Her innocent curiosity reignited the embers of courage within him, sparking a questioning resolve. What other challenges lay in wait? What parts of himself still needed rescuing? As they pressed deeper into the woods, the sense that they were not alone encircled them once more. A rustle came, stronger now, accompanied by a low growl. The mysterious presence returned. The shadows darkened and Mike's resolve stirred. He understood now that the journey was far from over. The time had come to face not just the lurking threats around them, but also the layers of his own psyche that he had long avoided. What lay beyond the next thicket? A confrontation awaited, and Mike felt an uncanny mix of dread and determination at the thought of facing whatever might emerge. The shadows stretched ominously around them as Mike took a steadying breath. He could feel the weight of their collective uncertainty pressing against him, a pressure that had haunted him for years and now manifested in the murmur of the forest. Lucy remained blissfully unaware, gazing curiously into the darkness like a beacon of hope. It inspired Mike, challenging the demons he often housed within his consciousness to come out and dance in the light. "Stay close, Lucy," he instructed again, but this time his voice brimmed with authority, a tone that surprised even him. It wasn't simply about protecting her anymore, it was also a declaration to himself, a commitment to engage instead of retreat. Every step forward felt laden with potential, and the promise of revealing hidden layers within himself that he had never dared to explore. A sharp snap of a twig reached his ears, and instinctively his body tensed, ready for action. The menacing growl amplified, reverberating through the underbrush. This was it, a confrontation. As he squared his shoulders, Mike felt the adrenaline race through him, igniting an energy he had almost forgotten existed. He faced the shadows, determined to transform fear into strength. Emerging from the darkness was a creature, larger and more intimidating than he had initially anticipated. A wild boar, tusks bared, clearly feeling threatened by their intrusion. Mike instinctively shifted his position, preparing to protect Lucy at all costs. He caught her eye. A flicker of fear crossed her face, and that flicker ignited something profound within him. The same protective instinct that had always prompted him to shield others now spurred him into action, demanding he rise to the occasion. But as the beast stomped forward, he wrestled with a more significant internal adversary, a replay of past mistakes, a haunting reminder of the times he had failed to step up when it mattered most. A wave of self-doubt crashed over him, forcing him to reconsider his options. He realized he could either succumb to panic, drawing Lucy into his anxious spiral, or confront this challenge head-on. Drawing on that earlier encounter with the fawn, Mike understood that acting with compassion could steer him away from fear. "Lucy, I need you to stay quiet," he whispered, locking eyes with her to convey both intensity and calmness. He then slowly stepped forward, trying to create a safe distance between Lucy and the agitated animal. As he moved, Mike found himself gravitating toward an unexpected clarity. The turmoil inside him began to settle as he focused on the creature before him. Instead of viewing it as a threat, he recognized its cold fear, a familiar emotion raging within him. "Hey there," he called, voice steady as he crouched low. The boar halted, snorting, its beady eyes narrowing but curiosity overshadowing aggression. "I don't want to harm you." To his amazement, he meant those words genuinely, not just for the creature but for himself as well. In this moment he felt unshackled. His previous failures could not dictate his present. The boar shifted uncomfortably, perhaps sensing the earnestness that surged through Mike. That connection, a moment of shared vulnerability, unfurled like a long-lost thread, bringing him back to a time when he had believed in his ability to effect change. Suddenly, a whirlwind of rustling erupted from behind, and before he could react, a desperate voice pierced through the tension. "Help! Help! My friend!" The clarity he had fought for fractured, startling him with the realization that their adventure was poised for another challenge. Mike felt the urgency shift in him again. Answers beckoned, layered with intertwining paths of concern, bravery, and the insurmountable need for redemption. The forest that had once loomed with menace now throbbed with promise. "Stay put, Lucy," he said, resolved to investigate, knowing every challenge would illuminate another piece of himself waiting to be reclaimed. The instinct to move, to assist, surged through him, and he was not about to let that slip away, a second chance sprawling before him. He stepped forward into the unseen, ready to face not just the cries, but the unexpected revelations that lay buried within. Would he find a frightened child, or something else entirely that would demand far more from him than he had prepared for? Mike advanced cautiously, feeling every element of the forest compress around him, thickening the atmosphere with an electric tension. The urgency in the voice echoed in his head, pushing him forward. "Help! Help! My friend!" It had a childlike tremor. It reminded him of innocence fighting against the chaos of the world. He glanced back at Lucy, who stood still, curiosity painted across her face. Her eyes wide, reflecting both concern and resolve. She was strangely rooted beside him, a source of strength inadvertently encouraging him to step deeper into uncertainty. Before he ventured further, self-doubt flickered again at the edges of his mind. What if he failed again? Was he ready to confront whatever was out there? He remembered his past missteps, the moments lost to fear, the times he chose to stay still rather than risk stepping into a situation he couldn't control. But this time felt different, and with Lucy beside him, there was a weight pushing him forward. Resilience surged as he plunged into the shadow-laden path from where the cry had originated. Trees twisted above him like fingers grasping for light, the uneven ground muffling his steps. Each rustle of the underbrush sounded magnified against the backdrop of his quickening heartbeat. The thrill of adrenaline coursed through him, mingling with purpose. He was moving towards someone in need. Eventually, he broke through a dense thicket, finding himself startled by an unexpected sight. A little girl no older than 6 crouched against a fallen log, tears streaming down her cheeks. Beside her lay another child clutching his ankle in pain, clearly unable to move. Just the sight of them ignited a primal instinct within Mike. He felt a rush of determination flooding through him, washing over the remnants of his prior doubts. "Hey," he murmured softly, approaching them with care. "What happened?" The girl startled, retreating slightly at his sudden presence, her gaze darting between him and the injured boy. Mike knelt lower, presenting an inviting demeanor. "I'm here to help. Can you tell me what happened?" The girl hesitated, flicking her gaze back to her friend who groaned softly. "We were playing hide and seek and he fell. He can't walk." The urgency of the situation snapped Mike back to focus. He assessed the boy who was biting his lip in pain but mustered a brave face. With every ounce of composure he could muster, he steadfastly spoke. "I'm going to lift him up now. I need you to keep him calm. Can you do that?" Her nod reassured him, but a part of him still wrestled with the panic magnifying within. He couldn't fail them. He refused to. Gently, he lifted the boy, careful not to jolt any injuries. "Just focus on me," he whispered, a calm steadiness reverberating off his words. "What's your name?" "Tony," the boy gasped, clutching onto Mike's shirt. "Okay, Tony, you're safe now. We'll get you sorted out." The weight of Tony's small frame lingered in his arms, but this act placed Mike in a pivotal moment of reflection. He was acting, transforming fear into energy directed toward genuine need, and with each passing second, he unraveled a layer of himself he'd kept tightly bound for too long. "Let's go back to the path," he instructed, beckoning Lucy to follow. Each step became a reminder of his capacity for bravery, each moment charged with the promise of redemption he yearned for. They navigated through the underbrush, and with each shift of his footing, Mike could feel the grip of his insecurities loosening slightly. As they approached the main trail, the unmistakable sounds of laughter from a nearby gathering drifted through the trees. A stark contrast to the life and death urgency they had just faced, it struck Mike as a challenge of perspective. What he had been afraid of had transformed into a learning experience about the courage to step beyond the shadows of his own fears for others' sake. But just as they emerged into the clearing, an unfamiliar voice called out, tossing Mike back into uncertainty. "What are you doing with him?" Instinctively, his protective instincts ignited. He turned to face an approaching figure, an adult, eyes dark with suspicion, shadowing the safety of their newfound victory. The confrontation hit him hard, and for the first time he could feel the stakes escalate. He would need every ounce of strength he had unearthed in himself. Rising tension loomed like clouds before a storm, and Mike braced himself to rise again. This time, to defend not just others but the newfound realization of who he could be. What confronted him now would test everything he had learned during this journey through the woods. Would he be brave enough to stand his ground? Mike's heart pounded as he faced the adult, a figure who seemed to loom larger than life at that moment. The man's narrowed eyes drilled into him, a mix of suspicion and fury that made Mike feel both small and exposed. He was being forced to confront not just the immediate situation but also the deeper fears that haunted him. Was he enough? Did he have what it took to protect those he had just rescued? "Just getting him back to safety," Mike asserted, his voice steadier than he felt. He stepped protectively in front of Tony, whose grip on his shirt tightened in response to the grown man's aggressive demeanor. Lucy, not far behind, held her breath, waiting to see how this encounter would unfold. "What do you mean, safety? Who are you?" the man pressed, his tone accusing. "I'm Mike. I found them out here." "Tony fell and hurt his ankle," he explained, trying to project calmness despite his racing heart. The weight of their scrutiny felt like a tidal wave threatening to pull him under, and he could sense the uncertainty emanating from Tony, who was flicking glances back and forth between the two adults. "Do you have any idea how dangerous it is for kids to be out here alone?" the man continued, his voice harsh. "What were you doing in the woods?" The gravity of the question struck Mike anew. His mind raced as he thought of how ill-equipped he had felt days prior, wallowing in self-doubt. But now, instincts honed from years of serving in the Marines surged to the front. He wasn't just a bystander, he was capable, and he wouldn't let someone else's fear strip away his sense of purpose. "We were playing hide and seek," Tony piped in, his voice barely above a whisper. I fell. The adult's demeanor shifted slightly, as if the innocent mention of a game momentarily loosened the tension surrounding him. Yet Mike could sense that the man was still lingering on the edge of confrontation, that the protective instinct inside him was battling against the stranger's vulnerability. Look, it's okay, Mike continued. We're not a threat. I just want to help. A flash of empathy flickered across the man's face, making Mike wonder what background lay beneath that hardened exterior. Yet, before any kind of understanding could fully settle, Lucy took a step forward, gently placing a hand on Mike's arm. Let's get Tony to an adult, she suggested, voice light but laced with concern. Panic won't help anyone. The man's body relaxed slightly at her words. Noticing the bond forming between Mike and the children, he hesitated before responding. All right, but I'm coming with you. Mike nodded, silently grateful for the support, though confusion lingered. Who was this man? Really? As they steered back towards the safety of the path, the shadows of the forest seemed less daunting. It all felt like a pivotal moment. He was not only defending another but also solidifying his own capabilities. Feeling a sense of ownership over the situation, Mike began brainstorming a few questions for Tony that could keep him engaged as they walked. What's your favorite game? He asked, and the boy's face brightened, revealing glimpses of his usual spirited self. The discussion flowed, and gradually, the tension lifted, the looming obstacles reshaping into puzzles that Mike felt compelled to solve. With Lucy at his side, and the man following closely, Mike couldn't shake the feeling that this scenario reflected much larger dynamics. Not just the wildness of the woods, but also the complexities of human interaction and the misunderstandings that could arise from fear. As they neared a group of familiar faces gathered at the clearing, Mike's apprehension shifted again, morphing into anticipation as he felt the warm presence of reassurance. Yet, even craning his neck toward what lay ahead, he sensed that this encounter wasn't over. The kindness of the man he had yet to fully understand tugged at him. In the sharp contrasts of these moments, what he had thought would be merely an act of bravery was blossoming into a defining journey of self-discovery. But before Mike could explore those thoughts further, a whistle broke through the air, sharp and demanding. Someone in the crowd was signaling, eyes wide with confusion and concern. What now? The revelation of yet another surprise obstacle loomed, stoking the fires of trepidation within him. Would he be ready to stand up for both the innocent and the vulnerable? This time, as a leader. As they reached the clearing where familiar faces punctuated the landscape of worry, Mike felt the anticipation swell within him. He was treading the line between past failures and the possibility of newfound leadership. People turned as he entered, their expressions a mix of relief and concern, unsettling marks of judgment weaving silently through the gathering. Mike, are you okay? What happened? A voice called out, drawing him into the circle of anxious adults. They rushed forward, concern etched on their faces, yet the look in their eyes weighed even more heavily on him. I'm fine, Mike assured them, catching their gaze with steady intensity. We found a boy who fell. He needs help. As he relayed the grim details, he invited Lucy and Tony to step forward as representative survivors of this slightly chaotic adventure. The adults' worry softened, shifting toward Tony, who stood next to Mike, muttering about the fall and emerging with brief sparks of embarrassment about being in pain. The warmth in their gaze started peeling back layers of previous judgment and replaced it with gratitude. Thank you for looking out for them, Mike, one woman said, stepping forward, her arms open, ready to embrace the fallen boy. I don't know what I would have done if they didn't come back. An unforeseen rush of pride washed over him, buoyed by that sincere acknowledgement. It was different from the accolades he had received in military ceremonials. This gratitude felt earned and resonated among the collective sigh of relief that swept across the group. Lucy was a great help too, he stated, nodding toward her. She helped keep Tony calm. The adults recognized her bravery with genuine smiles, transforming once muted expressions into beams of appreciation. Mike finally felt a sense of belonging creep in through the cracks of his self-doubt. This world he had long shied away from was possible to navigate. But a lingering question nagged at Mike, waiting patiently as the crowd thinned and memories of judgment faded. He went over to the man who had displayed that initial tension, who now carried the weight of gratitude in his demeanor. "I know this may seem like a bit of trouble," Mike began, searching for the right words, "but we all have our struggles, even kids like them." The man nodded, and their connection deepened as Mike seized the moment to open the channel of dialogue. In front of others, he was slowly shedding the last of the insecurities that had previously shackled him. Each word he spoke drew him more into the present moment, rather than flitting through anxieties of the past. "Sometimes we just need a little push," Mike said, glancing back at Lucy and Tony, who were now momentarily engaged by another adult who offered them juice. Those children represented a life worth safeguarding, a hope that transcended struggle, woven into the fabric of community. "You were brave today," the man replied somberly, but with unmistakable respect. "Thank you for stepping up, really." Empathy bridged the remaining gap between them, revealing that strength came in all forms, that even now he could conquer fears he believed would never leave him. Just as that thought solidified, a congratulatory clap interrupted. One of the parents started commending the kids for their courage, leading to a chorus of cheer from the onlookers. Movement caught Mike's eye, and he turned to see parents gathering closer to applaud Tony and Lucy's bravery. In that comforting swell of camaraderie, the reality of his transformation rolled over him like a gentle tide. He had moved beyond survival into a realm of contribution and protection. The small actions today had bolstered not feelings of inadequacy, but equipped him to become a voice of support, a pillar of encouragement, and an ally of strength for those around him. As the clapping subsided, Mike straightened, no longer burdened by the shackles of his past. People recognized him not just as a Marine, but as a man transformed by the experience of facing his fears and embracing connections. He embraced the weight of gratitude with dignity. Nothing had changed externally, yet everything had shifted in his internal landscape. He had faced uncertainty, and rather than retreat into it, he had stepped forward. Like that fawn, he understood now what it was to be vulnerable, while also guarding the fragile hopes of others. As evening descended around them, Mike realized he felt fresh resolve rising within. He did not simply need to move away from his past, he could also reach beyond it and inspire others to create a path through shadow, one purposeful step at a time. With clarity illuminating his way forward, he felt ready to tackle the next chapter of his life, one filled with achievements steeped in connection, compassion, and the acknowledgement that true bravery often lies in confronting fears together. "Let's remember to check in on one another," he proposed to the small gathering, people nodding in silent agreement, an unspoken bond uniting them through shared struggle and the triumph of the day. With resolve, they began to disperse, promising to meet again, this time not merely as neighbors, but as members of a community woven together with threads of understanding and respect. In that quiet moment, Mike accepted that he had not only conquered the turmoil of his own past, but had emerged as a leader, now turned guide for others. The shadows he had once feared transformed, opening the door to authentic growth and an unwavering sense of purpose. He was ready to engage, uplift, and empower himself and others, stepping forth with confidence into a future brightened by the connections he never knew he could forge. This was the moment, and everything had changed. Subscribe immediately to the channel to not miss the next exclusive emotional stories. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm. Your support makes a difference. Comment below your reactions and theories about this thrilling ending. Share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this powerful conclusion. You need to subscribe now. This is the moment to show your support. Don't wait even one more second to share. True fans of personal overcoming stories understand the importance of supporting the channel through these actions.